Hey everyone, welcome back. It is my favorite time of the month again, where we sit down and check out some of the best looking upcoming new titles. For this August, we've got a few great looking games, including the follow-up to 2 Point Hospital. This time you're tasked with managing the operations of a college campus for knights, wizards, robots, and other things. There's a roguelike action game where you play as a lamb building a cult of worshippers, a brawler royale, think battle royale but with cartoon wrestlers, a new action game taking a stab at the Souls genre, set in a medieval plague. Saints Row gets a reboot this month, which is like GTA, but with more silly guns and jokes. There's a monster collecting puzzle adventure game that is totally not Pikmin, an indie boomer shooter that may look like Doom, but doesn't quite play like it. And beyond that, we've got a few honorable mentions as per usual. Before we jump into this month's games though, let's go ahead and get a word from today's sponsor. Today's video is sponsored by Aura. This is an app designed to protect your data from hackers, scammers, and spammers. Aura continuously monitors the dark web, looking for your emails, passwords, and social security numbers, and if detected, will quickly send alerts to your phone or email. So basically, if anyone but you is using your stuff, they will let you know. Aura will also give you alerts for suspicious credit inquiries. It can automatically send requests on your behalf to data brokers to remove your information, helping reduce spam and robocalls. They've got a VPN that allows you to stay anonymous online, and antivirus software that will block malware and viruses before they infect your devices. Identity theft is a pretty common occurrence, unfortunately, with a new person reportedly getting their information stolen or used every 14 seconds. Well, Aura is something that can help protect you against this. So if all of this sounds like something that might be useful for you, you can head on over to aura.com/force or just check out the link in the description below, and signing up using my link will give you a 2-week free trial. Okay, kicking things off this month is 2 Point Campus. This is the follow-up to the wildly popular 2 Point Hospital. It is basically a management sim that is a little less on the serious side. In 2 Point Campus, you're tasked with building the university of your dreams, constructing classrooms, hiring staff, and taking care of the students as you run the day-to-day operations of a not-so-run-of-the-mill campus. You're going to start off with a simple plot of land, placing down empty buildings, laying sidewalk, fencing, landscaping, much of which can be done in a drag-and-drop fashion, which is pretty cool because it looks to give some flexibility on the size and shape of what you're building. And then from there, with the groundwork set, you will fill stuff in, deciding which buildings do what, placing down classrooms for learning, lunch halls to keep everyone fed, dormitories so that your students can get some rest. There's a lot of decorative elements as well, with benches, fountains, sculptures, and hedgerows. Inside of the buildings, you can manually place windows, plants, posters, and doors. And as you build this stuff up, students will start arriving on campus. Just like 2 Point Hospital though, this isn't a straight-laced sort of affair. You're not just building like math, English, and art departments. No, they've got all sorts of crazy things. Like there's a night school where students can learn the art of being an armor-clad medieval jouster, or you can construct a gastronomy department where students learn to craft massive oversized pizzas and pies. There's a spy school, a wizardry school, not quite Hogwarts, but pretty close. And beyond managing your facilities, the game also focuses a bit more on interacting with the characters, your students and staff. You'll work to try to keep everyone's morale high. You'll get to know everybody, exploring their individual personalities, their wants and needs, and then placing down things accordingly, helping them build up friend groups and socialize with activities like clubs and societies and gigs. I would say that if this is anything like its predecessor, it's bound to be one of those games that's just really good, lighthearted fun. In general, I enjoy titles like SimCity because they can be really chill and relaxing, and 2 Point Studios kind of takes that formula and adds a bit more humor to it. And like I said, their first title, 2 Point Hospital, was quite popular. It released back in 2018 and has over 20,000 Steam reviews. It sits at a very positive rating. So yeah, my expectations are pretty high for 2 Point Campus, and I do really like what I've seen. 2 Point Campus launches on August 9th, priced at $39.99, and it is coming to Xbox, PlayStation, and PC via Steam. Cult of the Lamb is a roguelike action game where you play as a lamb brought back from the dead to serve a dark master. Your goal is to build up an army of followers and eliminate the non-believers who sentenced you to death in the first place. So this is a top-down action roguelike. You will move through various stages, fighting enemies, which are basically in like these little mini arenas. You'll enter a room, you'll take everybody out. This will clear the stage, letting you move on to the next interconnected room. And then once you make your way through an area, you will then get to select where to go next at a branching path. So you might have a choice of going to another combat area, or visiting an item shop, or a mini boss, or a mystery location, which could be one of a handful of things. It's a very similar structure to a lot of other roguelike games. And all the while, you are building up your strength. You'll be picking from a random assortment of items that you come across, unlocking new and more powerful weapons, as well as special abilities. You can get passive buffs through this tarot card system, and you'll defeat bosses and convert members to your cult in that process. There's also a system of community management or base management as well. You've got this plot of land where you can construct various stations, minding the mood of your followers, dealing with any dissidents, trying to keep everyone fed and happy, and performing the occasional ritual. At first glance, I really wasn't sold on this game when I just saw it in passing. I think the visuals in particular just didn't pull me in, but I gotta tell you, I sat down and played the demo, and at this point I've come away fairly impressed. This seems pretty well put together. The combat felt really smooth and engaging, and I appreciate some of the subtle humor in the game as well. Like, a lot of the characters make funny noises during the dialogue sections. I don't know, there's some level of endearment that I have to this game at this point after sitting down with the demo. Now, the developer Massive Monster has made 2 games prior to this. Nothing that really took off, but both titles nevertheless do have very positive ratings on Steam. Cult of the Lamb stands to be their biggest hit yet, if my early impressions are anywhere near the mark. It can be hard to tell with these indie games sometimes whether or not they're going to end up finding an audience, but again, my first impressions are that this certainly has a chance. Cult of the Lamb will be launching on August 11th. It is priced at $24.99 and is coming to Xbox, PlayStation, Switch, and PC via Steam. Rumbleverse is a free-to-play 40-person brawler royale, or in other words, it is a battle royale with a focus on melee combat, more specifically, wrestling-themed fighting game style melee combat. So you're gonna have a whole host of offensive and defensive moves. Everything will have its own use case as well as counters. It is all very rock, paper, scissors in nature, as most fighting games tend to be. At the start, 40 players get launched out of cannons into this large city, and then once they land, they run around searching for stuff. You can smash open crates and other objects in the environment. Inside, you might find consumables or weapons or buffs that can enhance your damage, health, or stamina, and then you use all of this stuff to try to get an advantage over your opponents in brawls, in fights. Combat has plenty of knockups and grapples and throws, all of this very wrestling inspired, and again, rock, paper, scissors in nature with different attacks and guards for those attacks. On top of that, there are things like supers and special moves that you can pick up for limited time use. All of this really aims to help keep things interesting beyond that base level combat. There's always an element of RNG that goes into a lot of battle royales, and again, that helps to keep things interesting. The buildings within the city can be scaled as well, letting you move around freely to either chase or avoid other players. There's also an ever-shrinking circle that gets smaller and smaller as the match progresses, forcing the remaining players into close quarters and into conflict, and you're trying to win fights, get stronger along the way, and survive to the very end to be the last one standing. The game also has a character creator with a ton of customization and depth, letting you build all sorts of crazy characters. And in general, I would say I like the idea of this game. It is a pretty neat spin on the standard battle royale formula. It's like a battle royale for people who like fighting game combat versus most battle royales, which are all third or first person shooters. I suspect the game will have a decent player base at launch, especially considering it's free to play, and I can also see it doing very well on consoles just in that ecosystem. It seems like a game fit for that base. Rumbleverse launches on August 11th. It's coming to Xbox, PlayStation, and PC via the Epic Store, and they'll be kicking off Season 1 a week after launch on the 18th. Thymesia is a dark fantasy Souls-like action RPG set in a medieval-inspired world of alchemy that's been overrun by a plague. You play as Corvus, a half-human, half-raven on a quest to find the cure. The game's got hack-and-slash action combat. They're considering this a Souls-like. It is a bit on the faster pace side though, more aggressive, and maybe closer to the pacing of something like Bloodborne compared to the typical Souls fare. This is largely due to this wound mechanic, where after attacking an enemy, you expose this wound damage. It will regenerate over time time, but if you continue to stay aggressive and keep attacking, it stops the regeneration, and you also have access to this unique claw attack that will deal bonus damage to wounds. It's kind of an interesting system where there's like 2 damage types and 2 health bars basically for every enemy. Thymesia also appears to have very weighty and timing intensive combat. You'll have to carefully watch your enemies and time when to attack and which of your attacks to use. You've got the basic light and heavy attacks, those claw attacks that I mentioned for wound damage. There's also the system of plague weapons where every enemy has this unique plague weapon that you can steal from them, and when you reave it away, it will give you this one-use specialty attack essentially. There's also a ton of timing with the defensive maneuvers. There's dodges, deflects, and feathers. In proper Souls-like fashion, if you die, you will load back at the most recent checkpoint, dropping an equivalent of souls, which you'll want to go out and retrieve. There's also an upgrade system letting you enhance the various offensive and defensive maneuvers. And structurally, from what we've seen, this very much so appears to be a super linear action game. You will move through tight corridors from one enemy encounter to the next. Along the path, you might find some story bits or checkpoints, which are called beacons, similar to the Souls bonfires, and you work your way through the levels, taking on these groups of enemies, hitting these checkpoints, and making your way to boss encounters. I think the game looks pretty neat overall. It is almost certainly smaller in scale compared to like its contemporaries to other Souls-like games, and I think currently the biggest question comes down to level design, if they can keep it interesting. Everything we've seen seems very tight corridor and super linear. I think if it stays like what we've seen, it could be a little underwhelming, so hopefully they've got some more interesting expansive stuff that they just haven't showcased yet. Thymesia launches on August 18th for $29.99, coming to Xbox, PlayStation, and PC via Steam. Saints Row is the latest installment in the Saints Row franchise. This is a reimagining of the core series. It's not a remaster though of the 2006 release, nor is it a sequel, hence why it's not called Saints Row 5. Basically, they're trying to reboot the series with all new characters, a new setting, and a whole lot more features and modern day systems. Now, in case you forgot, Saints Row has always kind of been like GTA, but a little more over the top. It's an open world sandbox game that's less rooted in reality, I guess, if you want to call GTA realistic, but I think you know what I mean. Saints Row is just a bit zanier, more stylized, crazier weapons, bigger explosions, more jokes and attitude. They even have digital display emoji helmets, if that tells you anything. The Saints Row reboot takes place in the southern desert city of Santo Ileso, as is the usual case in successive games in the series. They say that this is their biggest open world to date. It'll be full of stuff to do, plenty of side hustles and criminal activities that are all filled with these various blockbuster over-the-top cinematic moments. And it's the standard open world formula. You know, you'll go around, there'll be side quests to do, or you can just do whatever. You can screw with NPCs, you can drive vehicles over buildings, cause explosions, shoot all sorts of stuff. There'll be mini games to play, little funny moments all around the world. And the ultimate goal in the game, though, is you're trying to like build up this criminal empire. So the city is made up of various unique districts, and every district will be controlled by one of the game's enemy factions, like rival criminal gangs. Basically, they all have distinctive looks and attitudes and play styles. For example, there's the Marshals, this international high-tech corporation, the Panteros, the muscle and physical power faction that's all tough and brutal and favors melee attacks, and the Idols are anarchist. They kind of remind, they're like EDM ravers basically, or influencers. It's a little cringe, but I think it's supposed to be, so you know, it is what it is. The game also features these things called criminal ventures. This is kind of cool. These are crime operations that you undertake to build your empire. You select from various businesses and you get to choose where you want to build them, and each of them come with their own characters and gameplay elements and unique rewards. So they gave some examples in some videos. There's like the Bright Future Disposal Facility where you can charge top dollar to dump corporations' toxic waste. There's Let's Pretend, where you and your crew can gather up to pull off heists. There's the Shady Oaks Medical Center, which is a front for your insurance fraud scheme. The game also features deep character customization called Boss Factory, lets you design all sorts of characters. Really, really deep customization. You can make some pretty interesting stuff here. So first impressions came out recently. There was some hands-on event apparently, and they've seemed generally positive. People are slanting towards this seems like a fun sandbox to play around in, so that's good to hear. Saints Row will be launching on August 23rd for PlayStation, Xbox, and PC via Epic. Tinykin is a mini monster collecting puzzle adventure game. Alternatively, this looks a lot like Pikmin. You play as Milo, a scientist from another planet who, while looking for Earth, accidentally lands in an oversized house frozen in time. Your goal is to help help its inhabitants and figure out a way to return home. So you're gonna run around as Milo, exploring these cities that the ants, beetles, and other insects built inside of a giant human house. Every room is basically its own unique city with its own characters, puzzles, and problems to solve. And as you navigate the environment, along the way, you will be collecting hundreds of Tinykin who have special abilities. They come in different colors and with it, different abilities. They can, for example, help you to climb higher, to bypass certain obstacles. In general, just interact with the environment in different ways that will help you solve the various puzzles. You can collect upgrades to improve your abilities, enhancing things like your bubble pack or your soap board, which lets you jump, grind, and hover all around the house for quick movement. There is a narrative arc to all of this. You will meet new characters in each one of the various room cities, learning their stories and then helping them with their problems. Now, the ultimate goal is to bypass all of these obstacles, help the inhabitants solve the puzzles in every room, and in turn, this gives you access to one more bit of machinery that you need to return home. I think this looks pretty slick. After watching a bit of gameplay, I mean, jokes about the Pikmin similarities aside, I am impressed with what I've seen. It seems like this could be quite a fun, unique puzzle adventure game. And hey, there aren't a lot of games like Pikmin, so if more games in this genre, in this style come out, I think that's a good thing. Tinykin will be launching on August 30th, coming to Xbox, PlayStation, Switch, and PC via Steam. Scathe is described as an intense classic FPS that requires quick reflexes as you make your way through a bullet hell labyrinth. It's got a visual aesthetic that reminds me at first glance quite a bit of Doom 2016, although I'll tell you, after having tried the demo, it really doesn't seem to play like Doom at all. So you're dropped into these levels and they're maze-like, they're labyrinths as they call them. You have to move through their various corridors, fighting through hordes of enemies, collecting upgrades, trying to survive, and searching for these things called hellstones, which will let you advance onto the next level. The gameplay is a bit grounded. You're not really zipping around the map. There is a dash, but for the most part, your feet are on the floor. There's an array of different weapons to swap between, like rifles and shotguns and launchers, and each one of these will have a primary as well as a secondary, more powerful attack. There is that dash ability. Besides movement, it can also damage enemies, and there's also these things called ancient relics that you can find that act like special magic skills. Having played the demo, I'll have to say it seems like a small-scale indie boomer shooter. I quite like the visuals in particular. I thought the weapons look really, really good. The game does the whole character closely inspects and checks out in detail a gun when you first pick it up. But I do also have to say that I think the gameplay, for whatever reason, feels a little, I don't know, not as impactful as I was expecting. Like sometimes the shooting does feel good, but some of the character movements and the animations in the game seem a bit off. And my lord, I'm not sure if it was an issue just with the demo build, but some of the audio in this game was legitimately difficult to listen to. Like specifically a bunch of the different enemy attacks just sounded really bad, as if all of the audio was clipping like way into the red. It was really grating. But because it's a demo, I'm not willing to pass final judgment on the game, obviously. I'm hoping that this was just a audio issue specific to the demo build. And in general, there were aspects that I really liked. The game is quite difficult. It felt cool to navigate these levels and try to not get instantly blown up. And again, I think the visuals look really good. I'm impressed, like checking out the screenshots, but also, yes, even the game in motion. I think it's got a cool aesthetic to it. This is the first game being made by Damage State. They're a studio that was formed by ex-games industry developers. So hopefully they can pull this one together, because I do think there are some neat ideas here. Scathe will be launching on August 31st. It's coming to the Xbox and PC via Steam. There are a few other honorable mentions coming out this month that I want to mention before we wrap stuff up. Hard West 2 is a turn-based tactics game set in the Wild West with a hint of the occult. There's also Farthest Frontier, a town management sim, and this is the newest title from Crate Entertainment, who are the creators of Grim Dawn. I love that game. We've got the PC port of Spider-Man coming out this month. I don't have a lot to say here. It is Spider-Man. The reviews have been out for years. As long as they don't screw up the port, this should be good. Gloomwood is a Victorian horror immersive sim. I just am including this because I love the look. It reminds me so much of the 90s PC games that I used to play. Really, really cool vibe here. Rollerdrome is a third-person stunt shooter where you ride around on rollerblades, shooting other rollerbladers. Midnight Fight Express is a top-down brawler. This is that game that we talked about a while ago that was made by a single person. Pretty impressive. And then lastly is Soul Hackers 2, a supernatural JRPG. This is the newest release from Atlas. I am assuming this will be a pretty decent game, possibly pretty big as well, but it's not really in my wheelhouse. Pretty much the only reason it didn't make it onto that main list. And with that, we will wrap up this month's list. Thank you guys, as always, so much for watching. I've really continued to enjoy doing this, covering these upcoming games, the stuff that I think is interesting. It is always funny, though, to see after the month has passed and we finally know whether any of these games are good or not, people coming back and commenting. People lost their mind that I mentioned Diablo Immortal in the other month's list, which I get it, but it was too big to not mention, basically. But boy, what a dumpster fire that was, huh? All right, well, that does it. Thank you so much, as always, for watching. Hope you enjoy the content. I'll see you next time, all right? Take it easy.